Will the real Jan Henry please stand up? I thought it was a great title. This is my life story done as a cartoon, a strip cartoon, starting with my parents holding me in their arms, and here I am crying, and here's my birth sign in Libra, all my pets and all my naughtiness when I was a little girl, and my kidnapping little boys and camping by the sea when war broke out, and some of the bombing, and then I can't really remember all that I've put here, but it is there. Not in all that much detail, because after all, it's sort of a lot to squash in, isn't it? I'll whiz through who I am, because I'm Janet Vivian Beasley. I was born 1933 in England, in Oxford. I was born into a family, the Beasley family, and I was totally unexpected. So my mother was 41 when she had me, and pretty cross about it. My mother told me that I was unplanned. You're lucky I had you. And I thought, what does that mean? When I was born, we were in that very brand new maternity wing, and I was the first baby to be born in that wing. Only 2 beds in it, my mother in one corner, and a Japanese lady in the other corner, the Japanese baby. So I was born, and I was swaddled. You know, you talk about swaddling clothes when baby Jesus was, well, they used to swaddle babies very tight, so they didn't fidget. Well, I was so cross. I was lying there swaddled so tight. I was maybe a day old, I don't know. So I decided to get out of my body, which I did, and I floated around the room looking down. And then my family came in, my siblings came to see me. But they looked at the Japanese baby and said, come on, it's not the Japanese baby, it's me. And then I got so cross, I got back in my body and stayed swaddled up. My mother fed me or something. I did know for sure that that happened, you know, because 69 years later, I went to that same hospital, and my husband then had a subdural hematoma, and he was in Radcliffe Hospital, and I sat by his bed. I looked around the room. I said, did this used to be a maternity room? And they said, yes. It's now the neurological department. It was the same room, and I was 68, 69, and I knew every bit of that room. I don't know how to account for that, except that I think when some tests have been done to suggest that babies actually learn to be babies after they're born. You know an awful lot when you first come, and then you start being a baby. I think that I can vouch for that. We went then up to the Midlands. My father was in the motor industry and an engineer, and he had to go and work near Birmingham. He's famous because he named the Morris Minor, because Lord Nuffield said it should be called the Morris Junior. And my father said, no sir, I think Morris Minor would be better. Not that he ever got any credit for it. We lived in Oxford part of the time, and the Midlands during the war, and they found a really lovely small town for young people to grow up. A great school, great church, shopping centre, you know, lucky us. But best of all, a huge 3,000-acre park, which was natural, just lakes and woods and everything. I think they were sort of pleased if I wanted to go to Sunday school, because, you know, who wouldn't want them to go to Sunday school and want to go to Sunday school, you know? And So that was okay, but then I came home and asked questions, and it wasn't so good. And then when I started telling them that this was my box, and that a body is only a box for my soul. Well, it was my brothers and sisters who teased me about that. I think my mother would say, leave her alone, I was very, very frightened of the dark because I could see all the stuff in it. There was one bedroom I slept in our house in Sutton Coldfield, big family house, 5 big bedrooms, built-in cupboards. Wow, there was a built-in cupboard which had stained glass window panels in it. And it was just full of the most terrible monsters who would come out and get me. I mean, why wouldn't they? As soon as Mummy closed the door, and before I get on, they might get me. And I was very worried about what they looked like, and so, I wasn't going to take any risks. I probably slept with my head under the clothes until I was about 12, 13. The biggest thing about everybody's life at that time was the fact that World War II was rumbling away. During the war, we were, as a family, living in Sutton Coldfield, which is just outside Birmingham. Well, Birmingham was a big industrial city making munitions and tanks and all kinds of guns and things. So, the factories were bombed. Around our house, our town, there were these huge balloons on great long wires, which to protect. See, so airplanes crashed into them. It kept the bombers away. The balloons were sent up in a great circle around Birmingham every night, about 6 o'clock or sundown. When the bombing started in Birmingham, I was told that I'd have to go away from the bombing and live in the country with our friends. The Cottrell family, who were farmers. It was beautiful. There were ponies and puppies and gorgeous apples and pears and plums. The best thing, I suppose, was harvest time. Well, everybody helped with the harvest, especially the last few days. The binder used to go round and round, and now this clacking noise. Hundreds of rabbits would just bolt for it, and the dogs would kill them. And one came towards me, and I threw myself on it, and I felt this rabbit going underneath. Oh, that's that's funny. And I thought, if I get up, it'll run away. And I looked up, there's this little face looking up at me. So I let it go, and I got shouted at for letting it go. One morning I woke up, and there was the most terrible noise I ever heard. It was just like this. And I said, what's going on? They said, we were allowed to kill 1 pig a year for the domestic use, and the pig was being killed. So I went and looked over the gate of the barn where it was all happening. God, you don't really want to see a pig killed when you're very young. Well, any time, the blood was flowing down these troughs. Wow, I was pretty shocked. But I went back and had another look, and I thought, I'm making sense of an insensible world. We had this lovely bacon for breakfast. Nobody else had as much food as we had at the farm, but it had to be fed, it had to be killed, and it makes a noise, and it's hard work, and gradually things like how our food is produced and where it comes from sank in from a very early age. I went to school in a tiny village school. God, it was so primitive. all the kids went to in one class, so from 5 to 15. So I just didn't know what I was doing half the time, really didn't. I was very puzzled one day because there's this kid called Roland who had rather longer hair than usual and had a curvy grip. It was a bit odd, I thought, but he was nice and quiet and well behaved. But the teacher, whose name I better forget, I think, stood him on the desk and got a ruler, you know, those wooden old-fashioned rulers, and she just slapped him hard on the back of the legs until they were red and said, "That's for being a dirty Jew." Oh, wow. And I thought, what? He's the best, you know, he's the best behaved kid in the class. Why is she doing that? Years later, when I heard about persecutions, I thought there it was, happening in a sweet little village school with a thatched roof, and, you know, how wicked is that? Well, it happens everywhere, unfortunately, but my goodness, what a memory that is. The war was 5 years, and at the end of it, well, nothing was ever the same from that moment on. There's no doubt about it. The worst thing about it was for a 6-year-old, 5 or 6-year-old, to be without a mummy, mostly mummy. The worst thing, I suppose, retrospectively, was going to bed in the dark because we didn't have many lights and I was very frightened of the dark. I looked out of the window, my bedroom window, in this old stone farmhouse with the stone mullion windows. I saw this glow on the horizon. I said, "What, is that the sun setting?" "No, that's Coventry being blitzed, and it's still burning." So for a couple of nights I watched the sky orange, and I was pretty horrified because I just thought, "Oh God, there's orange skies, stuff burning." Where in the world is God? He isn't in the bathroom, he isn't on the stair, he isn't in my looking glass, nor in the dentist's chair. And he's never there at Christmas, where we're all so drunk and gay, but he's in an English garden about the 1st of May. After a while, it was Christmas, and we had a Christmas tree that touched the ceiling. We always had a Christmas tree that touched the ceiling. I would say, "Does the Christmas tree touch the ceiling? If it didn't, that's bad." Christmas was a bit hard for me because Mummy and Daddy, you know, but there was a little bicycle, and they said, "Mummy and Daddy have sent you this bicycle." Oh, I tried and tried and tried. It was really hard. I couldn't ride it, and my farmer host, Uncle Gerald, said, "Oh, Janet, haven't you learned to ride the old bicycle yet? Your mum and dad saved up to ride that bicycle and you can't ride it yet." I said, "I know, I can't." So I ran off crying. The next time I saw him, he said, "You ain't learned to ride your bicycle yet, have you, Janet?" This was clearly a case for God. So I knelt down and I said, "You know, dear God, I really haven't asked you for in fact, I don't think I've ever asked you for anything really important. So will you please help me ride my bicycle?" So he said, "Right, are you ready?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Take your bicycle to the top of Hill." It's the biggest hill. He said, "Put your hands over there, put your right leg over onto, get the pedal well up on the other side, get it well up like that, and then push." You know, because it was going fast, it's easier to balance when you're going fast. I said, "All right, God, now help me to stop," but he'd gone. He said, "Where are you?" So I swooshed into the gravel and lay there very happy because obviously I could now ride my bike, even if it was a bit hairy. And so I was bleeding and happy. And after that, it was okay. When I went through the farmyard, Uncle Gerald said, "Oh, you learn and learn." I said, "Watch me," you know. And I rode out of the farmyard. What was obvious to me was that we occasionally needed help, and who better to give it than God? You know, why go through anybody else, you know? And since I'd had some very good experiences already from the age of 4 or 5 or something, it was great. I mean, why mess about? I'll go back to the time when it was 1943, and so I was actually 9. And I went up to Scotland for a holiday. My mother had a cranky old friend called Mamie, who I called Auntie Mary, and she had no children. She was very rich, very spoiled, and she liked to have a little friend in the holiday. Every afternoon, she said, "I'm going to have a rest every afternoon, and you'll take your bicycle for about an hour, come back and tell me where you've been, and then make me a cup of tea." One day I went past this quarry, and I thought, oh, there's blackberries and a view up there. I loved climbing, so I climbed up. First of all, of course, I had to lay the bicycle down on the grass, take my purse off, put it down by the bicycle, climb up. And I can remember it as if it was yesterday. So I cycled home. When I got home, Auntie Mamie said, "Oh, where's your purse?" And I'd left my purse on the grass. So I said, "Oh, it's all right, I'll go back and get it." And she said, "No, it's too difficult." I said, "No, I'll go." She said, "No, it's getting dark," so I couldn't. So I said, "Well, I might find it tomorrow." She said, "Pigs might fly." I thought, bitch. I mean, I was so cross that she doubted me, you know. So next day I looked on the grass, because the grass was newly flattened where my bicycle had been. No purse. So I thought, well, this is clearly another case of God. So I knelt down and I said, "I've done a few good things lately. I can't quite think what they are at the moment, but I'll think of them later. Really, I will. Just tell me where my purse is." So I listened and knelt on the grass, and he said, "Go back down the road about a few hundred yards. On the left, there's a hedge, and in the hedge, there's a little gate. Go through the gate, but put your bicycle neatly on the wall. Don't worry, the dog won't bite you. There's 3 cottages in there. 2 are facing front, and the third one is crossways at the end. Take the right-hand path through the garden. That is the one you go to and ask." The door opened, and there's this old man standing there. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm terribly sorry to be a nuisance, but I wondered if you, when you were walking your dog, perhaps on the grass outside, maybe you saw my, perhaps you found my purse on the grass. And if so, I'd be really pleased, because Auntie Mary's very cross with me, and I'm just sorry to be a nuisance." So he didn't say anything at all. He just said, "You're a careless wee bairn. You don't deserve to have your purse back." And he put his hand up to where there was a row of old hooks just inside the cottage door. It was very dark, and then he just took my purse down, and he said, "If you look inside, there's 3 shillings and 6pence intact." And I said, "Thank you so much. Thank you, God." He said, "No, my name's McTavish, it's not God." I said, "Okay, thank you." And put it on, and it was one of these little white terriers, running around. And I ran back got my bicycle, and I went home. And I have the idea that God is useful. Why would a kid bother with a god or angels if they weren't useful? I stopped the vicar on my way out of church and said, why have you got all these angels in the windows and the statues? And you don't use them, do you? I mean, if you're not going to use them, why have them there, you know? He said, better come and have tea at the vicarage, my dear. So I went round. I don't know exactly how old I was then, maybe 11. I said, I'm going to the vicarage to tea. My mother said, you what? I said, I'm going to have tea with the vicar. He's going to tell me about angels. Oh, she said, are you all right? And I said, of course I'm all right. You know. So I went along. Oh, God, what a prat. He was quite unable to cope with my questions, so he sent me to the Catholic Church and said, they're much better at angels and saints and things than we are. You better run along there, you know. So I did. I didn't last very long now. I wrote to one bishop who said that the, what was the word? That there was no doctrine which suggested that the human soul lasted longer than after death. Where he says it's not part of the doctrine. I said, oh, I didn't know that. So big, you know, big discussions. And he was a bishop. Come on. I didn't really know what I thought, but I thought it sounded a bit odd coming from him. Science has gone to the moon and back. Well, we're still floundering around defining the difference between, you know, what's the soul, what's the spirit. We don't know, so we're floundering around with our meanings. I think it is our own higher consciousness, which is probably the same thing. Life, higher consciousness equals God. If you talk about any other definition of God, you get into very deep water and start sounding really silly. God made our garden lovely, I told that old man like an elf. Ah, he said, but you should have seen the mess when he had it to himself. The downside of all this was that I was in the bottom class because those days, if you couldn't shine at maths, French, Latin, that stuff, you weren't very well valued. But if you were artistic, if you could paint and draw and design and dance and no. Well, that was the time when my brothers and sisters, who were all quite a lot older than me, were starting to leave school and go and be physiotherapists, architect, motor industry. My brother was in the engineering business, and I really didn't know what to do. I would have liked to go to art school. However, my parents were complaining a lot about how expensive everything was and how difficult everything was, so I thought I'd better suppress my desire to go to art school or anything because it would be very expensive. Because that was nonsense. But I didn't know it was nonsense. So when my mother said, well, Janet, what do you want to do when you leave school? Do you want to go to art school? If you want to go to art school, speak up now. Well, I did want to go to art school, but I said no, because I thought it'd be better to go and learn shorthand and typing and bookkeeping and all that stuff I was so bad at. Damn. When I left, I went to the City of Birmingham College of Commerce, which was horrible. Hell, it was hell. So I concentrated on English literature, which I could do, and I did Shakespeare, got a silver medal and all that, but, you know, struggle to be clever. I always felt that I wasn't as clever as other people and that I was definitely lacking. I worked in various shops and things, which were pretty horrible, really. And so I used to get very bored, and I had notepad and paper behind and write poetry. I said, can you imagine a new colour that smells like taffety? and looks like the sea. So you're using the other senses, and can you imagine a new smell that looks like used and feels like worn out shoes? Or can you imagine a new feel? It smells like childhood fears and looks like spaniel's ears. And can you imagine a new sound? Hasn't been invented yet and smells like a stagnant lake and looks like fresh sponge cake. And all these things I can do, but I can't imagine a new love who is not you. That's how I turned it into a love poem at the end. But that brings me to the fact that some people like myself can imagine colours in terms of numbers. So royal blue is 9, maroon is 12, 5 is yellow ochre. And then names. What colour is Auntie Linda or something like that? It's just an extension of one's senses. When I looked at the stars at night, I could see the space between me and the star, you know, and sometimes I had to look away. You see the star, maybe, but if you're seeing the space like I see the space between me and you, but much further, it can almost give you vertigo, you know, so sometimes I'd have to look away because I saw so much of that three-dimensional space. And nobody else seemed to talk about it very much, so I felt I had seen the space between me and the star was not as other children are. And that was the first moment, I suppose, when I actually used that phrase to myself. You know, I'm not quite seeing the same things. I just can't find what I'm looking for all the time. There's a bird there somewhere. I can't actually see it on the water. I'm wandering all over the place. Look at this. I wanted to tell you something about the fact that my life seems to have been ordered or disordered or organised or lived by mistakes, you know. How did that happen? I don't know. I married when I was 27. I met this guy called Roy, who was 18 years older than me, enormously, what do you call it, charismatic, and he was a weightlifter with the Olympics. He taught me about this sort of spiritual stuff. He took me to hear Krishnamurti and other great Indian gurus and things, and Gurdjieff and so on, and I was impressed. And then one Saturday afternoon, after being to Portobello Market, and we had all this great stuff, we were cooking, and then we were talking about flying and being spiritual, and he said, darling, sure, will you fly with me? Wow, all right. What's that mean? And I thought, oh, he wants me to go into meditation with him or do some levitation or something. Will I fly with him? Yes, I said. And apparently what he was saying was not fly with me, but will you marry me? He said, well, I just asked you to marry me, and you said yes, so are we engaged? Are we going to see your parents or what? Well, anyway, there was no way I was ever going to disappoint this man, and it was such a good mistake. He is quite extraordinary. But it was a bit of a shock, and I said, well, I'll break the news to him tomorrow or sometime, but I never did. And then we moved to the country and had 4 babies, so, you know. When I got pregnant, my husband and I thought it was much better for kids to be brought up in the country. So we moved out to Pangbourne, which is about 50 miles out. You know, I gave up any idea I had of being anything else at that stage and just became a mother, which was fine. But, you know, the vicar didn't call and nobody asked me to tea, and it was, oh, you know, and it was just this baby that just wanted feeding all the time. I fretted for a while, but after a while I realised if I just surrendered to, you know, breastfeeding and vegetables and all that, and committed to it, it would be much better, which I did. And if I did any work, it was to do with freelance. So I had a little portable typewriter. I put it on the breakfast table, so I just pushed the marmalade and the cornflakes on one side, and off I'd go. And that was the most fruitful time of my journalistic career. I became quite ambitious. I sent stuff to the BBC, I was on Woman's Hour and other programmes. Not all that much, just as a freelance contributor. And that was extremely good for me because I could be Earth Mother and, you know, country bumpkin as well. I look back on the 17, 18 years I had with him as one of the most quiet but deeply good periods of my life. The vegetables, the gardening, the children, the animals, the apple blossoms, and the most beautiful flowers and things. The sheer simplicity and health and beauty of our lives. It was fantastic. How I loved it. How I loved it, and I still do. Oh, wait a minute, show you this one. Instead of doing it in a strip, I did it all, everybody, all at once. So this is Roy, who died in 1976. He's floating by, with his arms full of vegetables up in the sky. It's very sweet. He died in my arms at the railway station. It was a bit of a trip, that. I didn't realise it was terminal. I just thought he was having a nasty turn. Originally he was having a nasty turn, but, you know, I saw the ambulance men arrive, and they took him off, and I said, hey, where are you going, where are you going? And they said, oh, we're going to the Battle Hospital, you can come along. I went along, and after a while, I said, where is he, where is he, where is he? It was a horrible business, because they didn't take me into consideration at all. They just said, sit down. And then I said, can I come? Is he all right? And they said, no, you just stay there, by which time he had died. And they took him to the mortuary without telling me he was going. And they said, make an appointment tomorrow. Ring up, make an appointment, and you can see him in the Chapel of Rest. Wow, you know, that was so bad. So I was very upset because my husband, who just died, and the two things he never did. He never said I was beautiful, and he never, what was the other thing? Oh yes, he never said I love you for 17 years. He had this African grey parrot all his life, who he actually was much more affectionate towards than he was to me. So I had the parrot, I had the children, and so I better get on with it like the rest of my life. A huge chunk happened when my first husband died, and then I had a four-year period in which I, you know, did a few things which I'd never done before. I realized for the first time that I'd been really shortchanged by being told I had to be a secretary or something, or a shop assistant, because out there were all these great jobs nobody ever tells you about, you know. And I didn't really find out about them until I was middle-aged, you know. I thought, hey, call this work? I worked in the film industry in Covent Garden, some wonderful old warehouses turned into studios. And of course, film people really know how to enjoy themselves. And they were all kind of trendy and fun. And I was a widow at the time, so, you know, very good fun for me. After that period of the 4 years as a widow, I determined not to marry again for a while. But bang, I did. And I married Brian Henry for 22 years, and it was an extraordinary, most extraordinary time in my life. He was in television and newspapers, and he knew everybody. And it was an amazing time because we lived in Mount Monte Carlo and other places like that. We weren't actually all that well off, but we had all the trimmings, like a chauffeur and things, because it was all on the company, you know. I did, to some extent, do that thing which I'd done before, which was to put myself second in a way. I wasn't really being my true self. I was being somebody else some of the time, somebody more glamorous, traveling around, you know, Monte Carlo and God knows where. But it wasn't really me. So eventually I just had to face up the fact that I'd have to find out who I really was before I could be me. Any belief I'd ever had in anything was fading. The kids make everything a mess. You try to love them nonetheless. The mortgage payments fall behind. Your beloved one is less than kind. I'll dump all this and fly to Pune. I'll go right now, or even sooner. I'd never been to India before. Oh, yeah.
Nagendraharaya Trilochanaya Bhasmangaragaya Maheshwaraya Nityaya Shuddhaya Digambaraya Tasmai Nakaraya Namah Shivaya.
It was great. It was quite extraordinary. I must say it changed a lot of, well, it did change everything.
Mandakini Salila Chandana Charchitaya Nandishwara Pramadanatha Maheshwaraya.
Whatever was happening to me was happening very fast, and I was getting very excited inside, knowing that although I'd lived quite a long and interesting life, I'd only just begun, and that's how it was. I'd only just begun, really. This is the start of something big, because suddenly a lot of the wearisome and stressful areas of my life are coming together. I feel not so much that everything is a problem, but that, of course, that's what happens. It's how you see it.
Suryaya Daksha Dvaranashakaya Srinilakantaya Trishadvajaya.
When I had been dissuaded from going to art school or university or anything, I held it in my mind that one day I would go. I started when I was 65, taking evening classes. And then when I was 69, I got a first-class honours degree in fine art with a speciality in art in the community. and I got my degree from Oxford Brookes, and I got a first. Now, you may ask me why I worried about getting a first. I just wanted it. And when the results came through, I was just so happy, so happy. It was great. Here I am with my mortarboard getting my degree there. Now, this is the first sketch I did in England, and then I transferred it to the lino, and the pink areas represent the first cut. Anyway, here are some of the sheets which I've half done. When I come back from lunch, I'll be putting the other colours in. That's pink apple blossom. My husband at the time had cancer and was, you know, I was having to nurse him in between that, but it gave me a good distraction from all that stuff. But then he died. I don't know how this 22 years just slipped by, just like that. Brian was the most fastidious, most well-mannered and cleverest person I've met for a very long time. Very impressive indeed. I really loved him very much. Eventually, when I sold that house, the house I'd lived in for 46 years, I mean, that's a long time. We'd been packing for months. You imagine 4 tons of furniture were packed into 2 containers. I had a bonfire going for 3 weeks, something like that. Because as you pulled away old pieces of furniture, everything kind of fell apart, you know, it was terrible. The day the sale was completed, we had to be out by 12 o'clock midday. Wow. There was a moment, I can remember it now, I could hear the demons kind of in the sky crowding in on me. I could hear these demons. It was just relief and drama on all sides, which were worse than you can imagine. I felt I had to make up my mind whether to take up the offer of going for a few months to Australia or buy a place in Scotland. And so all these big decisions to make. My role as mother had been a reluctant one. It was as if I had to do it, and then as best I could, which was pretty damn good in its way. I mean, I did all the right things. But when that was over, I didn't feel that role need be mine anymore. I felt that I'd done double duty. And one of my babies had actually died, so there was a huge inbuilt feeling of pain and lack of support in there somewhat along the line. So I was glad to get out of that role. It's terrible. I've got grandchildren who don't really know me. You know, I don't really feel like a grandmother. And sometimes I have been told, you're not a real grandmother. I feel that badly because I see other people saying, oh, coochie coo, they're a grandmother, and everybody loves them because they're grandmother. And they don't even know who I am. Even the ones who think they know me, they don't really know me, and they don't really want to. That's a bit sad. You can't sweep them under the carpet. You can't actually sweep anything under the carpet, let alone, you know, a baby who died, or a son who nearly drowned and doesn't like you very much, or a daughter who didn't do what she said she's going to do, or a younger son who, you know, clearly thinks that I'm weird. You know, just learn to accept it.
Oh, Delphi, Paul, Ali, I love them so much, but they are being a problem to me. I can't accept them just the way they are. I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to hang on. I'm not the sort of person to hang on. Oh dear, I've got such a lot to learn. I hope the worst is over. I really do.
In between the two marriages, I went shopping in the car. It started to rain, but great big drops. I mean, huge drops. And as I went past the bus stop into town, there was this guy standing getting really very wet. He was wearing orange and he had long hair and everything. And it wasn't Brenda, by the way. And I thought, I'm single now and I can do anything I like. So I ran down the window and I said, do you want to lift into town? And he hopped in. It was actually Premda's best friend, but I didn't know that. And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, he's a window cleaner. And I said, come and clean my windows. And he said, okay, on Monday. He said, what? No, not Monday, I'm busy on Monday. Anyway, he came. He cleaned the windows, but he didn't finish. So he said, I'm sorry, I have to come back next week. Oh, he said, I haven't finished, but I will come and finish. It was a huge house. Anyway, he said he'd come back, finish the windows, which he did. And when I opened the door, there were two of them there, both very orange. And one was Brenda. Well, I remember feeling Brenda. I didn't really dare look at him because he seemed so shiny. You know, it was golden, like the light, sunlight coming out of him. So they came in and I was having to look away. He wasn't a window cleaner, neither of them. Well, you know, they were full-on wonderful natural therapists and they work at the local hospital and they were very okay. They said they were going to do some wonderful therapy and would I like to come for the weekend, confront yourself and dance and do a few things. So I went along to this lonely barn, out on the moors, and God, it was like nothing. I mean, you know, I was size 16 plus. I wore tweeds, I wore nylons and court shoes, and I had a perm. And within 24 hours, I was dancing naked in a barn, my God! And they'd invited Viresh, a great teacher, who was well versed in these techniques, which are pretty new then, to do things like meditate, but dance and not eat or drink or sleep for 48 hours. It was a lot of eye-opening stuff for me. But it did something to my head, it really did. So when I got back from that amazing experience, I had to fess up a lot of things that I'd, you know, prejudices and things. It was a really big breakthrough. Premda then was with somebody else, of course, and I went away and married somebody else. And then years later, he came to this reunion. And we got together again. Okay, stand by. This is a beautiful shot of the flat white with Matt's design on it, which Premda's now going to drink. Okay, Premda. Fire away. We had never been lovers or anything, but we had been madly attracted to each other in 1976, and we were now in 2003. And he came to reunion, and it was just magic. So he said, come to Australia, and I said, okay, I'll come for 5 weeks. Why not? Just try something entirely different. But really, meeting Premda was all different. So I just really wanted to be with him.
And see what actor came back.
He's extremely amazing company, just great company and unconventional. Oh, my friends at home cried, Jan, beware, beware, his flashing eyes and floating hair. Close your eyes with holy dread. Forward, oh show he has fed. Jan Henry, please be wise, don't drink the milk of paradise. Stay home with us, with what you know. But if you want to change, just go. And when I came, what did I find? Pain, but delight of every kind. It was better than I dared hope. But it was also worse. It was so bad at times. It was so different from anything else. And he was, he was a real, I don't know what he was. Dragons and hippies, roos and whales. Oh, I tell you, such fantastic tales.
Jan asked me to chant to the whale. And so...
But it was just a few yards.
Yeah. So it's okay. And the mother in the car, so off I went. And apparently, Jan said, because I had my eyes closed, the whale growled. I heard the growl, but I didn't know what it was. And there was a hard wind blowing on shore. And the whale was about 30 metres away. Yes. And she just blew this spout. I closed my eyes and I felt like my face had been hit with sand.
It definitely answered you.
Yeah, well, yeah. I can't, honestly, I wish I could say, yes, I was, my heart and the whale's heart beat as one.
No.
No, it was nothing like that. But she definitely gave me a spray. To tell you the truth, I wasn't prepared to lick my lips. Not on a first date. No! Even if it was a whale.
Did the whale get your finger?
Take a tip from me, the dog did.
He said, let us go up to Byron Bay and have a few adventures. Well, I was up for a few adventures because I hadn't had enough adventures according to me. No, I hadn't. And so we went to do a ritual with a shaman and to take some of this ayahuasca, which was what the shamans and the Amazonian Indians was just taking instead of, red wine, and they took this stuff. Because I didn't do any naughty drugs, I didn't. But I thought, hang on, 71, getting along, I might as well have a go at something or other. I took this little tiny cupful of stuff and was a bit apprehensive. I thought, no, nothing's happening. Of course nothing's happening. It's all a con. It's nothing going to happen. Zoop! And then suddenly I was somehow without a body, off the planet. And I'd never half experienced anything like being outside my body. Well, I wasn't outside my body. I was without one. And I looked around. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know. Never get back in my body. I was a little bit worried. Perhaps I'd be one of those lost souls, you know, that haven't got a body. Oh no! I became a reptile. Then I was in a temple of the evil monks. So different. The temple was made of malachite. After that, I started to feel, oh, this is the time I went back. So I sort of got back in my body. But before I went, I was turned into a licorice all sort. And I was a bit upset about that. And I said, why have you turned me into a licorice all sort? Because second to not having a body at all, having a licorice all sort as a body is perhaps marginally worse. I don't know. So just tell me what's going on, will you? And it was explained to me that the black and white striped car in a square cube would act as a reminder for me forever that all this business about having a body, a mind, a spirit, a conscious and unconsciousness, you know, an automatic limbic system, all kinds of layers of consciousness, including some which we don't even understand, are all part of us. At any one moment, we are it. The levels of consciousness are it, like a licorice all sort. Get it? So I said, got it! And then I came back. It gave me a direct experience of things which I had only read about. I knew for a sure fact that we are not our bodies, you know, we are not. And so that was definitely a big moment, probably the biggest. So after that, I felt I was just about to make the big decision to buy a house here and stay. I loved the opportunity in Australia, in theory, that I got my degree. I didn't have to be apologetic about any of my ideas. Now I can just say, oh, do what I like, or not, or whatever. And that was definitely suppressed for a very long time. I found that some of the synchronicities that have happened since I came here have just rocked me. I find things that are lost, I know things I can't, and love it, I do.
Today, Jan and Premda have invited you all to share and be witness to one of the most precious moments of their lives. The day when they face each other to reaffirm to each other and to declare before you, me, and the world their commitment of love.
I bow to you and the part you have played in my life in the last 9 years, which has been probably, definitely, the most enriching and challenging. In 2003, we entered what we jokingly called the field of all possibilities. It sounded wonderful, because I could only think of the good bits at that stage. But all possibilities is what we got. And I was excited by the huge risks I took. And I've remained excited ever since.
With all the morning bus-stops and all the evening makeups. take all the downs on the up and we'll dissolve all life in our winning cup. We are ourselves, being both. Please have me, Jan, God's sweet oath.
Did you ever think this could be the start of something big? And then it wasn't. Have you ever had that feeling about something? Yes. Well, so have I. And when I met Pranda, I thought this could be the start of something big. And it was.
One of the things that I find so utterly charming and disarming about Jan is this magical childlike quality that she possesses, and it informs everything that she does, this childlike wonder. And what's so marvellous for me to be so close to somebody who's 80 years old, that is physically, and to have that innocence. She now seems to reside in that eternity, and I find it very infectious and very, very sexy.
Oh,
No, it is.
thank you, darling. That's very generous. I put this armchair by the fire, which is where I've always wanted to put it. I've opened the front, which I've always wanted to do, and warm my legs. Something I've always felt was a good idea, and here I am. Everything's coming together.
When you've got the confidence to start getting what you really want for the first time in 80 years, you know, you really don't want to, you really don't want to stop. No. The most important thing I've learned as far as we lot are concerned is never, never, never let your daily lives become too set. Or better still, just don't install complacency. No, not at all. And here I am, a fantasy of fairyland, a demon lover to hold my hand.
I've got something to say. Better to burn out than to fade away. Yeah!
It's definitely your ration of
Yes.
loudness.
Yes.
It's terrible. When all the shouting and dancing and when it's all over, what's left? Because I am not my art, I am not my face, I am not my family. I am something quite apart from all that. You know, my fear is not Jan, my fun is not Jan. So what is? And as these things drop away and my understanding grows that I am not any of these things, it's all right. It's all right. I can relax and feel, you know, that there's some kind of inner peace. But friends, when I am dead, think of these things that I have said. Say when you come to bury me, she looked darn good for 103.